Thank you for joining us. This is another of our Head Forwards head-to-head events where we're debating interesting questions around technology or agile software development. For those of you who don't know who Head Forwards are, we're a software development company, technical consultancy company based in Cornwall in England. I'm John Howell. I'm head of technology, head of cyber here at Head Forwards. And today we're going to be talking, or these two gentlemen here are going to be debating the pros and cons of using an abstract method, so like story points for estimation, versus an actual method like time for estimation. I'm going to let them introduce themselves in a second. First, I'm going to explain the format. So Andy here is arguing in favor of story points and against time, and he's going to spend 5 minutes laying out those arguments, and then James here is going to give a 4-minute rebuttal, and then we'll swap over. So James will then give 5 minutes in favour of time and against story points, and Andy will rebut, and then at the end we should have about 10 minutes for questions. Please provide them. I've come up with a few, but it's much better if someone other than myself comes up with them. So Andy, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Hi, I'm Andy Weir. I'm a software engineer. Been working for Head Forwards for over 10 years. I'm currently helping a health company wrangle their legacy code base into something a bit more manageable. I've been doing that for 2 years. I bought a boat a couple of years ago, so in my spare time I'm either sailing a boat or painting it or repairing it or maintaining it. That's me.
And James?
Hi, I'm James, developer here at Head Forwards. Over 5 years, but been doing this for 20-something. Currently working with some insurance customers, and when I'm not here, I'm a much worse sailor than Andy.
Right, well in that case, without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Andy. At the end of both rounds, there'll be a poll, so if you could please vote on who you think the winner is, that would be great. Go for it.
So story points, probably need to start by describing what story points are, or at least why my conception of story points. So I kind of like to think of putting things in buckets, and you've got different size buckets to put things in. So it might be a 1-size bucket or a 2-size bucket or a 3 or a 5 or a 8. Or you might use t-shirt sizes. So you might be familiar with using small, medium, large to kind of put things in. So you look at things and you go, that's a 1-size thing, I'll put it in my 1 bucket, and you look at another one and go, that's about the same size as the 1-size thing, let's put that in the 1-size bucket. So it's comparing things to each other, and humans, we're good at that, we're good at pattern matching. We can kind of look up in the sky and see a rabbit in a cloud, and we're rubbish at absolute, so we're rubbish at judging time, and probably most people familiar with that, has been experienced that, either been in a room with or been the person who on Monday morning goes, I'm just going to do this thing, and by the end of the day I think I'll have it done, and then Tuesday comes around and goes, I'm just finishing off, it's taking a bit longer than I thought it was going to do, but I should have it done by the end of the day. And then Wednesday comes along and it's, I'm still doing it, but I reckon by lunchtime. And then Thursday and Friday we're still on that same thing that we thought we're going to have done by end of Monday, and time to kind of look at YouTube or do something else more interesting. We're kind of rubbish at judging things in absolutes, and that's the same in the wider world as well. If you imagine when you park your car, you can kind of look at a car parking space. You don't get a tape measure out and go, my car's 4.35 meters long and this space is about 5 meters long, so I'll get in there. You just kind of look at it and go, that space relative to my car is a bit bigger, hopefully. Definitely not out by an order of magnitude. You don't look at car parking space and go, that'll fit my car, but it only fit most bike in sideways. Like Monday, I thought I'd have it done by the end of the day. So we're kind of rubbish at working in absolutes. So that's kind of where story points come into the game. We can compare things with each other. We go, I've done one a bit like this before, it sounds like this, and I think this one's about the same, so we'll put that in the medium-sized buckets. So we're rubbish at using time. So that's one thing that's wrong with time. One thing that's wrong with time. Another thing is kind of how long is it going to take? And it's you might come up with a number, but it's relative. It's like how long for who? Is it a junior person or is it a senior person? Is it a junior person that's probably got more time than a senior person that's wrangling code reviews and strategies and diagrams, or so kind of like how long for who, and how long at the start of the project when you don't really know what you're doing, or at the end of the project when you're on a roll and you've kind of stepped on all the landmines, or in the summer when everyone's off on holiday, or in the winter when it's kind of party season, or you're off for 2 weeks for Christmas. It's kind of how long for who, when. So it's not as easy to kind of come up with that number about how long. And then another problem with time is quite often the number's already out there hanging in the air. Everyone knows that there's this budget to do this thing with, so you kind of already know what the answer to how long is, or you've got to start another thing soon once this thing's finished, so you kind of already know what the answer to how long is. So it kind of prejudices your thinking. And whereas if you're comparing things to things, you can kind of ignore that and put that at the back of your mind and go, it's about the same size as this thing. And then you go, oh, that thing took ages, so this thing's probably going to take ages, which is not what anyone wants to hear, but you can decouple yourself from the thinking about the number that's hanging in the air. And then another one, quite often it's, they need to know how long it's going to take. And it's kind of stakeholders or money people or sponsors or the financial director wants to know how long it's going to take. And that's probably not really what they're asking. They want to know how much it's going to cost, and how soon they're going to get a return on their investment. And we know we're rubbish at saying how long it's going to take, so it makes everyone sad when you say that. So you might, in a retrospective, I've heard this quite, we need to go, or 1 minute. You might need to say, we need to get better at estimating. Well, we're just kind of rubbish at it, whereas we can compare things together. So we can compare things together, we can work on what actually happened, how long this thing in the 2 bucket took, and we can probably predict that another thing in the 2 bucket's going to take about the same length of time without thinking about how long directly, and somebody else can work out the how long for you. And I'll stop there without going on to point 5.
Thank you very much. So now, James, you've got 4 minutes to rebut those arguments, and then I'll be back.
Right, thank you. Yeah, so there's some good points there. Obviously, relative estimation is a really good technique. It helps us to overcome some of the problems we have. I think ultimately, though, most teams always maintain a mapping between their point system and real-world time to some extent. So people tend to know, when I say a point, does it mean half a day? Does it mean a day? And that's kind of, and you end up with a shared understanding there across the team. I think also that it can be tempting to lean too much on previous points and their use as a prediction or forecast of what we'll achieve in the future. I think that it's quite common to see teams kind of game the point system, whether it's on purpose or just kind of a bit by accident. I think there's some dangers in reliance on points like that. And ultimately, someone does want to know how long something's going to take, or because they want to know how much does this thing cost. How can we sort of predict cost and time? Probably haven't got more rebuttal than that.
Okay, that's fair enough. You don't need to use all the time available. So, James, if you'd now like to run through your arguments for time and against story points.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
That would be great.
It feels a bit odd to be arguing for time, but so it's probably a bit more anti-story points. So kind of repeating it a little bit, I think points are kind of everywhere, and I think that most teams that think they're using story points aren't really. They're just kind of either unaware or kind of just pretending that that's what we're doing, and everyone's in on the game. So it's not just the developers, it will be Scrum Masters, project managers, product owners, and a lot of the time there's not a good enough shared understanding of what the points are actually giving us. And at somewhere at some point, you can't go back to, say, a finance department who want a budget for next year and say, big red T-shirt. Someone's got to translate what we're saying into time, really. It's probably worth mentioning, actually, it's a bit unfair, but the guy Ron Jeffries, who was credited with inventing story points, has publicly apologised for their invention. He doesn't say that they're absolutely terrible. He just says that they're often kind of misused, and if it works for you, it's fine, use them. But he's sort of get that in there, really. So if we look at kind of the root problems, I guess, of why story points came to be, I think it's quite enlightening. As you said, it comes back to problems with estimation. We're not very good at it, especially with software, and specifically the precision side of things we find very difficult. Now, if you go back in time to when this is sort of pre-Agile manifesto, when these ideas were first brought about, software teams were often very micromanaged because that was the way traditional project management was applied to software. So constantly looking for precision. And the teams were extremely frustrated by this. So because you're just constantly in discussions with various people wanting to know exactly when something will be ready and why not, why was it late. There's an old phrase that used to go around that the business doesn't really know what they want, but they absolutely know when it has to be done by. And so it's probably a very different climate to what some of the people here would be used to, because that we obviously Agile development is much more popular than that now. But I think that's part of the core idea of where points came from. They had the concept of an ideal day in estimating. So if someone wanted to know when something's ready, you could sort of say, oh yeah, it'll be 3 days, or 3 points, or whatever they were using. They did say that they only used to use points as an estimation of what could they think would fit in the next iteration, and quite often we see points used to do estimation way ahead of time when we don't really know what the size or scope of something. And ultimately, our iterations are time boxed as well, as we tend to. So we sort of have this sort of abstraction over the concept of a unit of time, like a day, but then we also then wrap that into a week or 2 weeks. So there's a little bit of a kind of don't quite fit, Now, in Scrum teams, I think the concept of a story point was often used to describe the effort involved in terms of wrapping up the risk, complexity, and the amount of work that you have to do. I'm going to get this in quickly enough. I think often that can lead us to obfuscate and be a bit hand-wavy with our estimates, rather than splitting the stories into the things and being specific about what's risky, what's complex, what's just grunt work. Is that, I'll carry on then. What can I fit into that? Must be a
Wish out how long we've got.
Okay, yeah. Okay, just to finish off, I don't know if anyone's been on a team where you found out that people have actually forgotten or don't agree on what a point maps to in terms of time and effort, and so you can, or someone's changed it halfway through, and you've been on holiday, or and that does happen.
Thank you very much. Very nicely used. Pretty much bang on 5 minutes. Well done, James. Andy, if you'd now like to, you have 4 minutes to rebut those arguments. Or as much time as you wish. Up to 4 minutes.
Um,
You've got a look on your face that was like, what was your argument?
No, I think there's the saying that it's better to do the wrong thing right than the right thing wrong, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't try and do the right thing right. So we're rubbish at using time, but then falling back to, well, we just use time anyway because that's what it ends up with is kind of not lazy, but not. It doesn't mean it's the right thing. If you use story points as intended and decouple them from your thinking about time, it kind of solves a whole lot of the problems like how long is it going to take? Yeah, you need to know how long is it going to take. And I actually had a point about how long it's going to take. I'm going to sneak in. How long is it going? The money people wanting to know how long it's going to take. They want to know that if it's going to take ages. And the DORA metrics, I love the DORA metrics, say that we should build small things and release them frequently. And the other half of it says don't break things, and if you do, fix them quickly. But if you're releasing stuff quickly, the whole equation, how much is it going to cost? How soon am I going to see it? How long am my cash going to be tied up? When am I going to get my return on investment? And when am I going to learn out whether my bright idea was stupid or genius? You find out that sooner if you make small things. So kind of using time for how big is a small thing? Well, we're rubbish at judging a small thing because we can say it's going to take a day and it takes a week. But you can pick a small thing out of a one story point bucket and go, I'm going to build a one story point thing. So it kind of feeds into the story points, feeds into that, and decouples no one cares how long something's going to take if it takes a couple of days and you see it and it's making money. People aren't going to be on your case about how long. If it takes 3 months, but then it really takes 6 months, they get really sad about that because that money is in a pot tied up, not earning anything. Yeah, I think that I'm going to stop there, otherwise I'll be rambling. I think that probably answers indirectly.
Yeah, no, okay, that works for me. So thank you very much both. We are now hopefully going to open the polls. Great, thank you very much, Lindsay. So we now have some questions. I'm hoping that someone has a question who isn't me. Dave, shall I pass you the microphone? That's probably the best way to do this.
Thank you very much. Andy, I think you made a good kind of case for how humans are terrible at estimating in time. And James, you made a pretty good case for lots of people just convert points into time anyway. So you've kind of both just kind of set up the scene for kind of everything is kind of broken. So I wondered how you felt about just not estimating at all, kind of the kind of hashtag no estimates movement, and whether that's the saviour of everything.
I agree with a lot of it, and I think what Andy was alluding to about continuous delivery and short iterations and pushing value out all the time is part of that.
Yeah, I think there's two parts. There's the messy bit that everyone forgets about the project at the start when it's all a big mess and you don't really know how long it's going to take. People want to know how long that bit that you don't know how long it's going to take and how much it's going to cost them. So you kind of need something to deal with that. And then once you get on a roll and you build some trust from delivering that on time or something on time and getting something out into production, then people tend to not care about your estimates anyway. But it's going through the process of estimating, even if you don't use the estimates, can be useful for highlighting kind of discrepancies in understanding. If someone says it's going to be a 1 and someone else says it's going to be an 8, someone doesn't understand something there. So even if you do the estimating process and then throw it away at the end and don't use it for working out how long or when, or the actual process of trying to guess how big it is can actually be really useful.
Okay, thank you very much. Has anyone else got another question? Shall I? Yeah, go for it. Craig, here you go.
Thank you, John. Thank you, guys, for your arguments and your rebuttals. I've got a few questions, but actually this one just came as you were talking. So I've always been interested in evidence-based scheduling. So how we learn from our estimates each time and how we improve and how we get better. I'm just wondering whether or not you guys got thoughts whether story points or time helps us to get better at predicting the future, predicting the next sprint or the next piece of work.
I can go first if you want.
Yeah.
I think whatever you're doing, you're working with what's come out the other end, so it's exhaust. So you're kind of using the past to predict the future, and so long as the future looks the same as the past did, then you can make accurate estimates. And if the future looks different, which sometimes it does, like who could have predicted we're going to have a global pandemic, then all bets are off. But it's so it's useful to use something to predict, but we're rubbish at using time for anything, so it's unreliable. Story points, it's easier to have a conversation about story points. If you say something's going to take a week and then you say a week isn't a week anymore, a week is a week and 2 days, that's a difficult conversation, and it kind of leads to the whole we're behind, we said it was going to be done at this time and now we're behind and we need to catch up and we need to cut corners. Saying that a one-pointer, we thought it was going to take a week but now it's going to take a week and 2 days, I think is an easier conversation to have than you end up kind of fudging the conversation around time, saying, well, actually, it's a week, but our capacity isn't a week, and we don't actually get a week's worth of work done. And then that opens up another conversation. Well, what are you doing with those 2 days that you lost? I think it's an easier conversation because it decouples time from the conversation.
Yeah, I think as long as the sort of the historical story points don't hide too much detail, then the same can be said. Sometimes if something was estimated as 3 points and it turned out to be much bigger, I think it's important that we are able to surface what we had to do in order to achieve that story and split it and say, what turned out to be risky or unknown.
Okay, great. I've got a question, but does anyone else want to have a go at questions? Go on then, Dave. Yeah. Excellent.
It might be a little bit of a one-sided question, so apologies.
That means it is.
So, well, it is one-sided. If story points are kind of so good, why, when you kind of speak to a builder, do they give you kind of a time estimate? Why wouldn't they why don't other industries use story points rather than time?
The argument I've always been familiar with is that there's too much unknown in software, which I don't necessarily agree with all the time, because quite often software projects might consist of things that are really familiar to the team and repeatable. And that something like someone doing some work on your house is doing something they've done lots of times before, and it's more or less the same as the last time. I don't know if that's true. That is the argument that I've...
When my extension found a mine when they were digging the extension.
I was just going to say they might not use story points, but have you ever had any building work done, and then have you ever had any building work done that got finished when they said it was going to get finished? We're rubbish at estimating time.
But if the builder says medium steak pasty rather than a week, I'm going to get another quote. or give him a steak pasty.
Cheers.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I've got a question, and it's sort of a bit related. So, regardless of your estimation method, ultimately someone is going to say how much. So, how do you go from your proposed solution to how much, and how does that look? Because you've got a problem both ways. Story points you're estimating, not a time-based thing, so you've got to roll that up somehow into money. But on the time side, you've got the problem that you've got to say, well, we said it was going to take 6 weeks, but actually we don't work at full capacity. So what does that look like? So how would you propose that you go from your estimation method to the answer the FD wants or that the client wants in terms of how much?
start by comparing it to something else. Otherwise, how on earth do you come up with a number in the first place? If you've got no point of reference, how do you come up with that number? So start with a point of reference. And I read a really good thing by Dan North about not spending ages to estimate big projects. Just get a few people in a room that've got lots of experience with being a project of that type and size and go, how long do you think it's going to take? And they'll go, oh, it's going to take about a year. We did another one that was a bit like this. It kind of feels like that kind of size. But you're starting with the relative, the A versus B. It's about the same size, A and B are about the same size. So if A took us this much time and cost us this much money, B is likely to take a similar amount of time and cost us a similar amount of money. So it's starting from the comparing A and B, and then work backwards from that to work out how much it's likely to cost.
James?
Yeah, I think in terms of delivery, try to reduce scope and deliver something valuable that isn't enormous, and but have to manage that relationship with the customer. But if you can deliver things as quickly as possible and as frequently, then the level of confidence around time and money will increase.
Thank you very much. So we're pretty much at 10 minutes of questions. Has anyone... Yes, excellent. Let me pass it back. Here you go.
Hi, this is more of a question like maybe like you can justify if it has to have a story point or not. This is something from you, James. You just told that I think we will be aware about the technology stack that the team is well aware about. And based on that, we can estimate the story. So now if we come across a problem which the team is not aware about or what technology to adopt, we come up with POCs. So in that case, we estimate even the POC because it adds value in terms of delivery. So if we have like 5 story points dedicated for the POC, and then we can move on in implementation. So that is what we think about. So do you think estimating a POC is fair enough? Because one, we don't know how long that is going to take, and another thing, are we actually going in the right direction? Sometimes it do happen we spend 5 story points on that and completely ditch that. So what do you consider and how do you take this one?
Discussion about return on investment, and if you can prove in 5 points or days, that something's going to work or not work as well as you'd like it to, then that's time well spent. But as to estimating, I think often spikes kind of tend to get time boxed in Scrum teams. So, but whichever way you want to.
Thank you.
Yeah, I go with the time boxing. Kind of do as much as you can in a period of time, probably a couple of days, and then review how far you got. And maybe a year.
Yeah, have a time box.
Yeah.
And then
Otherwise, it's really easy to just keep going forever. Again,
Yeah,
I thought I'd have it done by the end of Monday, and you get to Friday, and you're still doing the POC. That's a one-pointer. So
yeah.
having those time boxes where it's the most unknown, you're deliberately going out to learn things is kind of time boxing.
Yeah, so have story points and time box. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we're pretty much at an end. Anyone got anything else? You've got about 1 minute, no? Go on then, Craig. One more.
So I'm just wondering whether or not you guys think your form of estimation can help you with, I guess, either resource allocation or accountability, which sounds like sort of big management type, project management type words. But if you've got, if somebody's working on a particular task and it's like, and they are taking longer, Andy, than you expect, does your form of estimation help you as a team to decide, should we step in and help, or is there something wrong here, or and similarly, sort of on the other end, if you're predicting the future, but getting to the end of a sprint, say, and you realise you're behind your burn down curve, you aren't going to achieve everything you need to achieve. You want to get to done by the end of the sprint. You've got to make decisions about what we're going to do today. Does your form of estimation help you, more or less than the other form of estimation.
I can go. I mean, I think that it's important to use estimation in the small just to try and figure out what the team can deliver inside of an estimation. Try to split those stories to the smallest parts that you can. You can say a single acceptance test for a story, and just learn at the end of each iteration. If the team didn't make it, then what got in the way? But I think not trying to estimate more than what do we think we can get into this next iteration is a good idea.
Yeah, I don't think the technique, probably, if you kind of look at a standard Scrum where you start with a 2-week bucket and you put stuff into it and try and guess how much stuff you can get done in 2 weeks, it probably doesn't really matter whether you've guessed how big things are in time or story points, but it gives you that kind of concept of what done looks like at the end of 2 weeks. We want all these things done and we thought we could do it. I think probably more than the estimation technique is the kind of the team, someone calling out and not letting you on Wednesday get away with saying I'm nearly done. Someone saying, hey, you've been saying you're nearly done for the past 3 days and you're saying you're nearly done again. You ain't nearly done. You're probably not, at this rate, you're not going to be done by Friday, and having a team where you say that and then stepping up and go, oh yeah, no. And it's even better if you can do it, but you normally can't see it if you're the one saying, oh, I'm nearly done. I've even recently been the one saying, I'm nearly done, and it takes someone else to say, yeah, you ain't, are you? And then kind of adjusting, right, let's break it down, let's do a to-do or split it down into smaller pieces and understand what you have done, what is left to do, and reassess how long it's going to take. But you need to stop, and you need a team to stop you to be able to do that, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your arguments. Thank you for your questions. So I think we've probably got a completed online poll. So maybe the people in this room are the only people that left. So, show of hands, story points. I'm not voting. So 4. And against story points, also 4. That makes the numbers easy. So we're split here. So it sounds like the online vote will carry it. So James wins. Well done. We have a victory for against story points.
I did not expect that.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everyone who's attended or watched online. See you next time.